Please, sir, by my drawing I'm very hungry. Billionaire Alexander Carter, known for his cold heart and towering empire, never thought a single moment could change his life. But when a ragged boy handed him a drawing of his mansion, something deep inside stirred something he had long buried. But what if this boy knew more than just his house? What if he held the key to a lost part of Alexander's past? You won't believe the twist that comes next. This isn't just about a beggar boy. This is about a secret that will haunt Alexander for the rest of his life. And trust me, you can't even imagine how this story unfolds on a cold, dreary afternoon. Billionaire Alexander Carter, known for his sharp business skills and cold, hardened heart, stopped at a traffic light in his luxury car. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a small, ragged boy standing by the curb. "Please, sir." The boy's frail voice called out by my drawing, "I'm very hungry." The boy stretched out his hand, holding a crumpled piece of paper. Alexander Carter was the type of man everyone envied and feared. At just 45 years old, he had risen from humble beginnings to become one of the wealthiest men in the city. His towering skyscrapers dominated the skyline, and his name echoed in boardrooms across the country. But despite his vast fortune, he had no family, no real friends, and his heart had long turned cold. His life was business, and he thrived on control. Power and money emotions, he often told himself, were for the weak. On that fateful day, Alexander was heading home from another high-profile meeting that had gone exactly as he had planned. He had closed a major deal that would see his profits soar even higher. He had everything: a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town, luxury cars, private jets, and a world that bent to his will. But as the seasons turned colder and the holiday lights began to twinkle around the city, there was something unsettling in the air, a void he could not place. As his sleek, black car approached the traffic light, he barely noticed the figure standing at the curb until the small voice broke through his thoughts. "Please, sir, buy my drawing. I'm very hungry." He glanced sideways and saw a boy no older than 7 or 8. The child was bundled in oversized, worn-out clothes, his face pale and his eyes large and hollow. With hunger in his small hand was a single piece of paper. Alexander's first instinct was to dismiss the boy. He had grown used to beggars, to the needy, to those looking for handouts. In his mind, it was always the same story: someone else's burden, someone else's failure. But something about the boy's eyes stopped him. He rolled down his window and beckoned the child closer. "Show me what you got," Alexander said, his voice laced with the usual indifference. The boy hesitated. Shuffling closer to the car, he held up the paper, and Alexander took it into his hands. What Alexander saw was not just a child's simple doodle. The drawing was crude, yet striking. It depicted a grand mansion, one that looked eerily familiar. Alexander's hands trembled slightly as his eyes darted to the details. It wasn't just any mansion, it was his mansion. The sprawling gardens, the tall windows, the fountain in the courtyard. It was all there, meticulously drawn by a child who should have no knowledge of it. But that wasn't what shocked Alexander the most. Standing in front of the mansion in the drawing were 2 figures: a tall man in a black suit, and beside him a little boy clutching his hand. Alexander's heart pounded, his eyes widened as he realized that the man in the drawing was unmistakably him. But how could this beggar child know such intimate details of his life, his home? Who was this boy? Alexander blinked, unsure of how to react. The child stared at him with expectant eyes, waiting for a response. His lips parted, but words failed to form. His mind raced with questions. Was this a trick, a coincidence? His logical side tried to brush it off, but his instincts told him otherwise. "Where did you learn to draw this?" Alexander finally managed to ask, holding the drawing up. The boy looked down, scuffing his shoes on the pavement. I don't know, sir. It's just something I see in my head sometimes," he said softly. "My mom always said I had a good imagination." your mother Alexander asked. The boy nodded, his gaze clouded with sadness. She passed away last year. I don't have anyone now, sir. I just wanted to sell my drawing so I could buy something to eat. Alexander felt an unusual tug in his chest, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. Pity, no, not just pity, a strange, connection, as if there was more to this boy than met the OD high he should have driven away. Tossed the drawing aside and carried on with his life, but something made him stay. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a crisp bill. Here, take this. It's enough for food. The boy's eyes lit up, but he shook his head. I can't take that for free, sir. You have to keep the drawing. Alexander stared at the boy for a long moment, then placed the drawing on the seat next to him. All right, he said, handing over the bill. The boy's face broke into a grateful smile as he clutched the money. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Before Alexander could say anything else, the light turned green and the cars behind him honked. Impatiently, he drove off, watching the boy fade into the distance in his rearview mirror. But as he sped away, the drawing remained etched in his mind. It was too strange to ignore, too haunting. To forget that night, Alexander sat in his expansive living room, the drawing on the table in front of him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the boy's sketch was more than just a coincidence. There was something deeply unsettling about how the child had captured his life so precisely. The more he stared at it, the more the details seemed to come alive. The mansion, the man, the boy, memories flooded back, memories he had buried deep for so long. His own childhood had been far from kind, raised in a poor, struggling household Alexander had once been. That same hungry child, his mother had died young, and his father, broken by grief, had disappeared into the bottle. Alexander had fought tooth and nail to escape that life, to build his empire and leave the past behind. But now, looking at the drawing, he couldn't escape the sense that it was pulling him back to a time he had tried so hard to forget. Over the next few days, Alexander couldn't concentrate. The boy's drawing consumed his thoughts. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the mansion, the man, the boy he knew. He had to find the child again to understand the strange connection he felt. But the city was vast, and finding one beggar in a sea of people seemed impossible. Days turned into weeks, and still the boy haunted him. Alexander's business began to suffer as his obsession grew. His colleagues noticed the change in him. He was distracted, agitated, uncharacteristically emotional. He stopped attending meetings, and rumors began to spread. Then one afternoon, as he was leaving his office, Alexander saw him, the same boy, standing at the same corner where they had met before. This time he didn't hesitate. He pulled over and approached the boy. You, Alexander said, kneeling down to meet the child's eyes. I need to talk to you. The boy looked up, surprised but not afraid. Is everything
all right, sir? Alexander took a deep breath. That drawing you gave me. How did you know about the mansion? The man, me. The boy looked confused. I didn't know, sir. I told you it's just something I see in my head. I don't know why. Alexander's heart pounded. There had to be more to this. What's your name? The boy hesitated. Ethan, he said quietly. Ethan, Ethan. Alexander repeated, his voice soft. Do you have anywhere to go, any family? Ethan shook his head. No, sir. I've been on my own for a while without thinking. Alexander made a decision that shocked even himself. Come with me, he said. Ethan's eyes widened. In surprise. Where, sir? To my house. I think we're connected somehow, and I need to know why.
When Alexander brought Ethan to his mansion, the staff was stunned. Never in all the years of working for him had they seen him show such kindness to anyone, let alone a street child. But Alexander felt something deeper at play, something beyond mere charity. He had to understand the boy and his strange ability. Days passed, and as Ethan settled into Alexander's home, more peculiarities began to emerge. The boy was drawn to certain rooms in the mansion ones that even Alexander Rarely entered, Ethan would often stare at the walls or old furniture as if they held hidden meanings. And then one night, Ethan asked the
Unthinkable, sir? He began hesitantly. Do you know about the boy who lived here before Alexander froze? There hadn't been a boy living in the mansion in years, not since. But how could Ethan know what boy Alexander asked, his voice tight, the one who used to play in the gardens? Ethan said, his eyes distant, as if recalling a memory. He was happy here until he wasn't. Alexander's mind raced. There had been a boy, his own son, from a long, forgotten past, but that was impossible. His son had died in a tragic accident when he was just a child. No one knew about it. Alexander had kept that part of his life locked away, even from his closest
associates. The pain had been too great, but Ethan's words brought it all rushing back. The grief, the loss, the guilt. He had buried it deep, focusing on building his empire to forget the pain. But now it seemed that the past had found its way back to him through a child who shouldn't have known. Alexander couldn't deny the truth any longer. Ethan's uncanny knowledge of the mansion, his connection to the boy in the drawing. It was all too much to ignore. He took Ethan's hand and led him to the old nursery, the room that had remained untouched since his son's death. As they entered, Ethan's eyes widened and he smiled softly. This was his room, he whispered, as if speaking to someone invisible. He used to sit here by the window waiting for you to come home. Alexander's breath caught in his throat. He had often been absent during his son's short life, consumed by his work and the pursuit of wealth. He had thought there would be more time, but fate had been cruel. Tears filled Alexander's eyes as he knelt beside Ethan. "How do you know all of this?" he asked, his voice breaking. Ethan looked at him with those same haunting eyes. "I don't know, sir. I just feel it." And then in a moment of realization, Alexander understood. Ethan wasn't just any child. He was a messenger, a reminder of the son he had lost and the love he had forsaken. In his pursuit of wealth, the boy in the drawing wasn't just a random figure. It was Alexander's son reaching out to him from beyond the grave. Through Ethan, in the weeks that followed, Alexander's life changed in ways he never thought possible. He adopted Ethan, giving the boy the home and family he had never known. But more than that, Alexander found something he had lost long ago. His heart, the mansion, once a cold symbol of his wealth, became a home filled with laughter and love. Ethan's presence healed the wounds that Alexander had carried for so long. And in the end, it wasn't the boy's drawing that had changed Alexander's life. It was the love he had rediscovered in a child who had brought him back to life. The past, though painful, had found a way to make peace with the present, and Alexander, once a cold-hearted billionaire, learned that true wealth wasn't found in money or power. It was found in the connections we make and the love we give.